be talking about touch-up paint, specifically touching up little rock chips and scratches that might be on the paint of your car. Now, when you think about touch-up paint, the first thing that might come to your mind are little bottles like this one, where you crack open the lid and there's a little paintbrush inside, well, kind of big paintbrush, and some touch-up paint. Or there's even skinnier bottles that you can get at auto parts stores or even in your dealership that come with specific touch-up paint for your specific vehicle. Now, it's unfortunate that these little kinds of bottles have become the standard when you're using touch-up paint on your car because they don't really seem to work that well. The problem with using bottles like that is when you have tiny little rock chips like these, and they usually do seem to be pretty small, using a big fat brush like what comes in these is kind of like trying to butter your toast with a chainsaw. It's just gonna be really hard to get a clean finished product. If you've ever actually tried to use a bottle of touch-up paint like this that comes with a brush, it may have turned out something like this, where the paint gets way outside of the lines of the rock chip, or it may end up something like this, where there just ends up being way too much paint in one spot and causes another eyesore because instead of being smooth, there's now big bumps where there used to be dips. Or especially if you're trying to touch up little tiny scratches and use those big fat brushes, it ends up looking worse too because there is just way too much paint being put on because the brush is just too wide. So if we're not gonna use the traditional way to touch up your paint, what are we gonna use? Well, let me introduce you to the $10 secret to getting perfect or almost perfect touch-up paint jobs, which is this little Lowell Cornell fine line painting pen. Let me bust this thing open and I'll show you guys what's in this package. So what this little thing comes with, which is under 10 bucks, is a couple things. First of all, you have the actual painting pen, where if you pull off the tip, you can see that there's a pretty fine tip on it. If you look down the middle, it's hard to see on camera, but there's a little hole there, a little pinhole. And basically how this works is you fill up this little reservoir with paint, start tapping it out, and the paint comes out much more precisely out this little tip so that you can fill in tiny little rock chips without having too much paint. Now what this other little part is, it's really important to have. It's kind of like a really fine pipe cleaner. If you can see here, it's just a tiny little wire, and the purpose of this is when this thing gets clogged up or when you need to clean it, all you do is just put it in the little hole here, move it around a little bit, twist it, and just clean it out from both ends. So this is a really important part, and make sure not to lose it. You can find this product on Amazon, which by the way, I will put a link in the description below. You can just click on it, it'll take you right to the product if you want to buy it. There's also another fine line painting pen from another brand. That's about 15 bucks instead of 10 if these ones are out of stock. Both of those links will be in the description below. Now for me personally, whenever I've used touch-up paint in the past, I'm always really dissatisfied with how it looks because when you're trying to fix a problem of having a rock chip, you create another problem by making it look sloppy and just having too much paint. So this is a great solution to that and should come out looking much cleaner than using this traditional touch-up paint. So let me show you how this whole process works and what it ends up looking like. So first of all, on this table is all you're gonna need. We obviously have the painting pen and we have some touch-up paint that includes a little brush. We have some isopropyl alcohol, which we will use later, and a little cup or some kind of reservoir that you can use to put the alcohol in. So first thing that we wanna do is get your little touch-up bottle here. And we are gonna be using the brush, but definitely not for touching up the paint on the car. So what you wanna do is use this little reservoir here and carefully drip in some paint as cleanly as you can, just to fill this thing up and get you locked and loaded and ready to go. All right, you can see that's pretty full right here. And this isn't gonna come out right away just because the tip on the bottom is so fine. So we're gonna go ahead and tap this to try to get the paint to come out. There we go. It's already running pretty good. All right, so the benefit of having this little thing, let's move over to the car, as I've mentioned, is that instead of using a big fat brush that's wider than the actual rock chip yourself, you can use this little fine painting pen here and just tap it and fill in your rock chip without ever exceeding the borders of the chip itself. And that's gonna make your touch-up job end up much cleaner. Tiny little holes like this are ones I was talking about where I would never use a brush for because it would just be way too big. So let's take this tiny little tool here. There you go, it's all filled in. And you can barely see it anymore, and it definitely did not overflow and put down too much paint. This car doesn't have really any massive rock chips, but we do have quite a few little ones that we're going to be filling in. Let's see if I can give you guys a better look on how this thing works. All right, you can see this little scratch there on my mirror, and you don't necessarily have to tap it if it goes a little bit longer. If it's not just a spot, you can actually just set it down and kind of drag it across like a little pen, and there you go. And also, just because the tool is small doesn't mean that you can't touch up bigger stuff. Like check this out where my bumper's all messed up. You just kind of paint it around. Being pretty precise, of course. And next thing you know, it's all filled in. Much cleaner than if you did it with a brush. And some of these spots, like this one right here, I've already filled. You can see it's more of a dip than a bump, which is a good thing because as this dries, you can come back and continue to fill it in without exceeding the borders of the chip, and eventually it'll be super flush with the rest of the paint. So basically, all you gotta do is fill this thing up, take some time, go across the whole car, fill all the little spots, and then give it some time to dry. Come back, if there's any more little dips and it doesn't seem to have filled it up enough, just touch them up again and continue to do so until it's flush. Something else that's pretty cool about this is you may think because it looks like it's kind of gravity fed that you can only use it on the top of the car. But actually just because of surface tension of the paint, it'll pull it out even if you have to use it kind of at a sideways angle. Just like that. If you were to use one of these big fat brushes and you wanted it to end up looking, after you touched it up, like the paint was flush with the car, you have to touch it up. Well, it's about to drop, a huge fat old drop, and that's why you don't want to use these things. But whoop, just made it in time. What you'd have to do is touch it up with a big brush like this and let it dry, and then come back, wet sand, and polish it just to wear down that big bump that you made with the paint down so it's flush. And so to me, just using something like this to touch up rock chips or to touch up scratches just doesn't make sense because you're creating more work for yourself when you're trying to fix a problem, instead of just making it simple and using the right tool for the job. Now there are a couple reasons why you're gonna need this little thing. One is if you have a lot to touch up, the paint's gonna start to dry on this tiny little tip here and it's not gonna come out that well. So what you can use this little thing for is to kind of stick it in there and clean out the end, and then all that dried paint will come off and you'll be able to have it start coming out clean again. And the other purpose for this is to clean this sucker out. So what you need to do is get some rubbing alcohol, fill up your little cup a bit, then take your paint pen and swish it around a little bit. I also like to tear off a little bit of a towel and shove it down in there and just make sure that you clean it out really well. You definitely don't want to leave any dried paint in here that isn't taken care of because it'll clog this tip up pretty fast, and if it dries, I don't know that this little wire will be able to get it pushed out. Now, I by any means am no type of paint expert or anything like that. This is just what I found to use, something you can use at home that does a lot better of a job than using your brush itself, and it's gonna give you a better result. Before, in the past, whenever I got rock chips, I never really even wanted to touch them up because it's such a sloppy job and it just never looked good. But with this, I don't mind doing it because it ends up being a lot more clean and I'm happy with the results. And I'm also not saying that this is gonna replace a professional job where it will end up turning out looking like glass, like there wasn't a rock chip in the first place. But if you wanna do a quick touch-up job, this I think is the tool for you to use. So check it out online, give it a try, and let me know what you guys think. If you guys liked today's quick little video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, especially if you like BMW and German car content. We do a lot of stuff featuring my E36 M3, other E36s, E30s, E90s, E92s, all that kind of stuff. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Holy shit! 596, 583.